Good morning, church, and welcome to today's service. Today, I'll be talking about what we believe and trying to stress with you the importance on what we believe in life and how that can impact not just our own personal life, what we achieve in life, but it also impacts generations to come and, in some cases, even entire cities. And I think this is important because it's one thing to be saved by grace. It's one thing to, if you will, have a ticket to heaven. It's another thing to live a life of everything you could possibly find fulfillment in and more. Okay, and I think a lot of times we get frustrated or disappointed is because of our beliefs. Okay, and so let me talk a little bit about that. And I know, firstly, I understand that this topic is really broad, and this is not meant to be an exhaustive sermon covering everything about beliefs, but it's meant to encourage you at the same time, cause you to reflect and ponder about some of your beliefs. Okay, and and uh, and I'm not talking about the core Christian belief. Okay, I think everyone kind of gets that, right? If you're in church today and you're a believer, I think most of you, don't have a problem with your core Christian belief. The belief that there's a God who loves you, the belief that Jesus died on the cross to save us. I think most of you, you can be assured of your salvation. You can be rest assured that you go to heaven when you die. So it's not that belief that I'm talking about, because I think most of you have that down pretty solid. Okay, but I'm talking about the other beliefs that we hold in our life, whether it's through the environment we lived in, or things we're taught in school, or things people have told us. And these different beliefs, or sometimes opinion, or our own interpretation of why the world is the way it is, a lot of these beliefs sometimes can totally shape what we end up doing in life. And sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And then there's another category of belief that are good belief which have roots in the scripture. Okay? And what I mean by that is that it doesn't mean that it will be a sin if you don't believe it, but I just mean that you will live a less prosperous life if you believe something different than that. Let me give you a more specific, more concrete example, then you'll see what I mean. Okay, would you believe that some very simple beliefs in life can actually shift the prosperity of an entire city for generations? Okay, and I'm going to show you some examples. And I'll try to hopefully not lose any of you in this process, so that we can get to the part and talk more about about one's personal belief. Okay, but I want you to have a more macro perspective, a bigger understanding of how simple belief can have huge impacts. Okay, so let me take you back in time. I don't claim to be any form of historian or a church historian by any stretch of imagination, but there were some points in history that really intrigued me, and I hope to tickle your curiosity in the process. And in 1517, there was a German priest named Martin Luther. And you got to understand, before his time, pretty much everyone was a Catholic. Okay, the Catholic Church was the dominant Christian church in the world at the time, and in Germany, you're pretty much Catholic. Okay, you don't really have a choice of other form of Christian belief. Okay, then in 1570 comes along a priest named Martin Luther, who received some revelation of salvation by grace. Okay, and that you do not need to. And at the time that the Catholic Church there are a lot of things they did well. There are some things they didn't do so well. And in that period of time, the Catholic Church didn't do some things really well. One of the things they didn't do well in was that they were trying to sell salvation. Okay, and that really upset him. And so he was the guy that basically revolted against the Catholic Church, and he started writing, on salvation by grace. He started writing on a lot of beliefs that were more, if you will, were more based on the Bible than on tradition. Okay, and that kind of started the whole Protestant movement in Christianity. And then in 1955, and then that also led to a lot of bloodshed, a lot of wars in the process, and in 1555, there was a temporary settlement that was reached, whereby the princes or the rulers of the different city could choose whether they want to be a Protestant belief and follow the Luther's teaching, or they wanted to remain Catholic. Okay, that was the arrangement and the settlement that was decided in 1555. Okay, and if we look at Germany, even up to today, you have a very strong Lutheran church culture in most cities. Okay, or they will be Catholic. Okay, and what was interesting was that from 1555 to today, okay, the princes or the that ruled the different territories, those who chose to follow Luther's teaching and become Protestant, even up to today, the entire area still remains Protestant. Okay, and the territories that decided to remain Catholic, even up to today, still remain Catholic, predominantly Catholic areas. Okay, and in other words, in the last 500 years, nothing really changed in terms of their belief. Okay, and this is important for what you're going to see next. Okay, so you got to understand this, because the only part that really changed was East Germany, that part of Germany that became communist, and a lot of them became atheists in the process. But for the part of Germany that did not shift, okay, those same territories still existed. Okay, and that is important because what we can do now is examine what was the difference in those territories 400, 500 years later. Okay, and what was surprising is that the people in the Protestant areas today earn more money than those in the Catholic area. Now you gotta understand, we're talking about a single country. Okay, so that means they all live under the same law, they live under the same welfare condition, they live under the same economy, the same everything. Okay, the only thing different is that some areas were Protestant and some areas were Catholics, and the Protestant areas earn more money than the Catholic areas. Okay, and what is even more interesting is that the income per hour is actually the same for both the Catholic areas and the Protestant area. In other words, there really isn't a difference in the salary. Given the same position, okay, your salary will be the same. Okay, and you're in the same country, you have the same education, you have the same everything. And so the only thing that's different is whether you're a Protestant or Catholic. And the Protestant area, you make more money in the process. So that became really, really interesting. And this is where economists begin to dive in and begin to try to figure out why. Okay, and they came to some very interesting conclusions. Okay, and their conclusion was this: the Protestant area have a certain belief in when Luther was teaching salvation by grace. He not only taught salvation by grace, there was a very strong work ethic in being hardworking. Okay, and so what you find is that the Protestant area, people usually work more hours than the Catholic areas. Okay, and there's also more women who will be working than the Catholic areas, as well as there'll be more people who will likely be business owners than just employees in the Protestant areas compared to the Catholic areas. And these all stem from the belief that a good Christian should be hardworking. Okay? It's a very simple belief. It's a very simple belief. Okay? But over 460 years to 500 years, it could change entire cities and territories within the same country. Think about that. Okay? So, being a Christian, salvation is the start. Okay? But you gotta see salvation as the start and not the end. Okay? Everything that happens after that really depends on what you believe from what you read in the Bible. Okay? And that's where the Bible comes in. Okay? The Bible is there to shed revelation, to shed light, so that you can shift your beliefs, okay, today, so that you can make a difference tomorrow and in the years to come. Okay, let's talk about the different levels of impact on our belief. Okay, first of all, on a personal level. Okay, let's use that same example that we just talked about, Germany. Okay, just to believe that if you're a Protestant and you believe that hardworking is important, okay, being hardworking is important. Okay, it's not a means to your salvation, because they were the ones, the Protestants were the first one to break away from the Catholic Church to actually believe in salvation by grace. So clearly they do not believe that they're working for their salvation. Okay? However, they do believe that being hardworking is an important Christian virtue or value or belief. Okay? And that itself, that simple belief, was itself enough for them to be more prosperous compared to their same fellow citizens in the same country, in the same economy, who don't have that belief. Just one single belief can make all the difference. Okay? We talked about over 400, 500 years. Okay, you can see generationally how our beliefs just not impact our lives and impact the lives of our children. And this could be biological children, this could be spiritual children. But it can impact the life of generations to come. Okay? And that's the thing that I hope you'll begin to see and understand. And there is a tendency for modern Christianity, okay, to be very egocentric. Okay, and it starts with salvation being a personal thing, and it's true, salvation is a personal belief. Okay, but sometimes we take it too far in the sense that we believe that all our beliefs should be personal. Okay, and that, my belief is my belief, and it only impacts my life. Well, not quite. Okay, your belief actually impact not just your life, but the people around you, your future generations, your children, your grandchildren, your spiritual children, your spiritual grandchildren. Okay, and for many generations after that. Okay, our belief also impacts cities. Okay, you take a look at Germany. Just the cities that were in the Protestant area became more prosperous than the cities that were in the Catholic area. Okay, simple beliefs making huge difference over cities. Okay, I want to bring you another example, John Calvin. Now, since we're talking about Martin Luther, okay, so John Calvin kind of came after Martin Luther. John Calvin was Catholic. His father got him trained as a lawyer. He's one of the most brilliant minds in his time. However, he learned of Martin Luther's teaching and revelations on salvation by grace, and that really convicted him. He got excommunicated by the Catholic Church. He basically had to run into exile after that. But and then he became one of the foremost thinker that developed the systematic theology based on Martin Luther's revelation. Okay, but I don't fully agree with the theology of John Calvin, but I do respect how his belief have impacted the world. Okay, and in particular the city of Geneva. Okay, when Calvin was on the run, it's quite interesting. When he was on the run, one of the cities that he stopped along the way was the city of Geneva. Okay, and he was actually planning to stay in a hotel for only one night and then continue his journey. But while he was staying at a hotel, a local pastor, I can't remember his name, I think his name was Felder or something like that, heard that he was there, and of course, and this pastor was just beginning to start a Protestant church, and he didn't really know much about how to organize one, and all they know was that they broke away from the Catholic Church, and he doesn't know much about what to do after that. And then he heard that John Calvin was staying in a hotel in his town. So he goes and sees John Calvin, and he's like, John Calvin, this must be divine. God must want you to stay in Geneva, and we really need someone like you. You need to come and pastor our church and stuff like that. And John Calvin is like, no, I'm a scholar. I'm not a pastor, and he really saw himself more of a thinker and to write books on theology, but not ready to pastor a church or to lead people or something like that. And this local church pastor basically cursed him, and it gets quite strange here. So bear with me, He said that something to the effect that John Calvin, if you don't stay here, and I'm going to put a curse on you, so that everything that you do will not prosper, And John Calvin got so shaken by it, so shocked by it, that he felt convicted that maybe God do want him to stay in that city. Yeah, it's really quite strange actually. And then so he stays in Geneva. He got kicked out by the city. He goes to another city for 3 years. Then he gets re-invited back by the city leaders to help build the city. And this is the interesting part. At that time, when Calvin went to Geneva and stayed there, it was considered the worst city in Europe. It was like the sin city. It was like, if anything bad can happen, it would happen in Geneva first. Okay, nobody wanted to be in Geneva. It was like, the worst of the worst city. Okay, but here's the interesting part. John Calvin worked with the city leaders. Okay, and even within his lifetime, Geneva was so transformed, okay, that when people visited the city, they said they could not find a single beggar in the city. The city was clean, the city was prosperous, the poor were taken care of. There was health care for the people, and you take a look 400, 500 years later, you look at it today, Geneva is one of the most prosperous city in the world. Okay, they have one of the highest standard of living. They have a level of prosperities that few cities have ever achieved. Okay, all because John Calvin received some new revelation, new beliefs, and he decided to implement it in the city with the city authorities. Okay, so this is an example of a city transformation that's real, that you can look at today and say, yeah, we can definitely see the impact of shifting the beliefs. Okay. And for John Calvin's part, like Luther, he believed hard work was a demonstration of salvation. Now, the part I don't quite agree with John Calvin was in his theology of predestination, but that's for another time. But he did believe in hard work, and he somehow managed to incorporate it into a city level. And that was not the only thing, but that was definitely one of the things that raised Geneva from being the slummed and the worst city to being one of the top cities in the world. So talk about our beliefs, okay? And I brought up the example of hard work. Hard work is a very, very simple belief, okay? And you can either believe it on a level that hard work is a good thing, or you can believe it on a deeper level that says hard work is really there in the Bible, in the many scriptures that refer to it, you know. And so depending on where you are on the foundation of that belief, that will impact your prosperity. Okay? Our belief of what the future will be like will also impact on how we live our life today. We don't talk much about our eschatology or what we think the end of the world will look like, or what the book of Revelation really means. And there are many different beliefs in the Christian world on the end times. And I'm not going to go into the sermon of what you should believe for the end times. But I want to say this much. What you believe about the end times would absolutely change how you live your life today. Okay? It's going to be important. It's going to be important that you choose to believe the end time in such a way that you will not only prosper today, but generations after you will prosper because of their belief. Okay? What we believe about health can change how long we live today. Okay? And I've covered this in previous sermons in the past, so I'm not going to dwell too much on it. I want to say there are communities today that live on average above 100 years old. Okay, and that's all because they have certain belief about health and they're living it. Okay, here's the other one that I really want to touch on. Okay, and our belief on what our limits, what our personal limits are, whether it's due to our age, our education, our wealth, our opportunities, can absolutely change what we do today and what we achieve in the next 10 years. Okay, you gotta remember Ray Kroc. He's the guy that really grew McDonald's. Okay, he built his first McDonald's at the age of 52. Okay, and upon his death, it was worth $500 million. Okay, from zero, and he started that at the age of 52. Okay, so why am I telling you that? Okay, because when we think about a limitation of what we can do, okay, you gotta understand, limitation is a belief. Okay, and sometimes we need to change the belief. Okay, and there are many examples, and I'll just show you one. Okay, do you know that world record itself is a form of limitation? It's a form of belief. And before 1954, it was believed that it was not actually physically possible of breaking the 4-minute barrier. Okay, in running. Okay, and until someone actually broke the 4-minute barrier. And then today, thousands of runners, they can complete the course in less than 4 minutes. In fact, today is considered a standard that all professional middle distance runners complete it in 4 minutes. But until 1954, it was a belief. It was a belief that it was not physically possible because no one has done it before. And so everyone believed that it couldn't be done. And the moment that record was broken, the belief was shattered. And everyone after that could run faster than 4 minutes. Okay? In the same way, you gotta ask yourself, what are the beliefs that are causing you to not go above what you believe are your limits? Okay, so here's some takeaways. Here's some takeaways I want you to really consider. Okay, I'm not questioning your belief in God. I'm not questioning your belief in your salvation. Okay, but I want you to question your belief on other things in life. Okay, what are your beliefs in your life? How does it impact your life today and tomorrow? What are your beliefs? How do your beliefs impact the lives of future generations, whether they are your biological or spiritual children? And then I want you to stretch yourself a little bit further and say, if your belief wasn't just a personal belief, but the entire city believed what you believe, how would that actually impact a city? Okay, I want to encourage you to be honest with yourself, to think about your beliefs. Okay, and if the Lord challenge you to change some of them, I want to encourage you to change some of them. Let us pray.